Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Event Collab podcast. Super excited today. We have Angela Alea, and I got it right. I made sure I said it 20 times in my head, right? Did I get it?
You got it right.
Did I lose you right when we started?
No, did you hear me?
No, I missed it. It's okay.
No, I said, yeah, you got it right.
That was the weirdest. It literally paused right when I said it. I was like, did I lose it?
No,
All right.
no, I heard all of it. You want to just
All right, sweet. Yeah, I'll do a mark a clip. All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Event Collab podcast. Super excited today to have Angela Alea on. Angela, how are you doing today?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Super excited to be back at it. Super excited to have you on. I've been kind of waiting for this interview, so so I'm excited. Let's jump in real quick. Tell everybody kind of who you are and what you currently do, what you got going on now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. First of all, I appreciate it. Looking forward to this conversation as well. But my name is Angela Alea. I am the President and Chief Revenue Officer of a company called Lasso, and we are the people platform for the live event and entertainment industry.
Nice. I had to ask this. What does a Chief Revenue Officer do? Is that you watching the money or making sure it keeps coming in?
Making sure it keeps coming in. Yeah, it's everything from our pricing strategy, how we charge, expansion revenue, sales, marketing, customer success, all things that lead to the top line.
I love that. So how did you actually get started in the event industry, entertainment industry?
Yeah, so I used to be a business consultant for about a decade before Lasso in the workforce management space. And I had a customer, Clay Sifford, who was my client. And that was really my first introduction to event production. And part of my engagement with them was, at the time, they were going through reclassifying their workforce. And so back then it was a novel idea, whereas now most companies are W-2ing. But it was they were one of the first because they had to, because they got audited. And so just working with him and learning about the industry, it was fascinating to me about how the industry operated. At that time I was just a consumer of these events. I went to our own corporate conferences and concerts and sporting events. And as the consumer of events, we have one idea and preconceived idea about what it takes to do the events. And then he walked me behind stage at my own corporate conference that I was attending. He's like, no, let me show you what's happening behind the scenes. And it blew my mind. I immediately had a completely different appreciation for what this industry goes through, and it's really underappreciated. So I was really fascinated by how the industry worked. He kind of said, hey, I have this idea. I really feel like our industry has an opportunity to be served in a different way when it comes to software, because so much of the industry is operating with bad data on Excel spreadsheets. It's very fragmented. It's hard for the companies, even more frustrating for these freelancers who are trying to make a career of it when there's no one place to kind of do all the work. And he said, I really think there's something here. And honestly, at the time, I thought, that's really just your company that operates that way. Surely, when I go to an NFL game, it's not produced on Excel spreadsheets. So I did my own research, and sure enough, the whole industry operated on Excel spreadsheets. And so we were off and running. And before we wrote our first line of code, I had the opportunity to spend my first 18 months on the road doing 450 interviews with event production companies, event staffing companies, hundreds and hundreds of interviews with the techs who make it all happen. They're the ones who helped us build the mobile app. And so really just wanted to dig in and understand the problem and the perspectives, because everyone faced something a little bit differently, because everyone does things a little bit differently. And so that was kind of my indoctrination into the event industry, and have never looked back.
That is so cool. I'm definitely with you on the how are we in the front of the camera, the camera itself is the most advanced thing.
Yeah.
And then it's no, we're just in Excel, not doing,
it's crazy.
making it happen.
Yeah.
In that, so I know a huge part, like, because we've talked before, and I know a huge part of your passion, like, are the people in the industry, and so, like, that's why I didn't even know that part about, like, getting to have those conversations as you were building the thing for everybody, right? What are your thoughts about, like, the current state of community right now in the industry?
It's definitely progressing. I hate talking about COVID now because I think it's over-talked, but I'm going to go there for a minute, a very brief minute, and then we're going to move on and not look back. But I do think that created, it helped people look inward to say, do I love this? Do I want to stay? How ingrained and how committed am I to this? Because it was hard before, but it's near impossible now, and it's a really dark time. So I must really love it to stay in this and fight my way through to the other side. And I think it's a testament to the resilience of our industry, the passion of our industry. People went without for a long time because they were dedicated. They were going to make sure that they could participate in whatever the new invention of the live event industry was going to look like. And in a lot of ways, we've reinvented ourselves. And in other ways, I see us falling back into some of our old habits, which is concerning, right? Because I feel like it could be truly a catalyst to have true innovation, a true reset. And I think the leaders in the industry are the ones looking at it that way. So I think as far as building community, I think there's certainly a heavier reliance now more than ever on the talent. And I think before, honestly, I think the industry took them for granted, the people that make it happen. And I think now they have everyone's full attention, full attention.
That's one of those funny things, is because I think one of the conversations we have now, especially with like meeting planners, event planners, and people trying to hire the production companies, they're like, wow, these costs have gone up. And it's like, well, part of it was, like you said, the idea of the people, a lot of people left the industry. Yeah. They were just like, you know what, it's not for me. And so now the pool is getting is a little smaller. And so people are charging more, right? Yeah. Supply and demand. In that technology push, because that was one of the things that I thought was interesting, is as the opportunity for change happened, how many people, missed the boat just in live streaming, right? Live streaming, the hybrid event idea. What did you see from, just your personal experience and people you've talked to, the people that stayed? Were they receptive to the change, or was it just they did it because they had to and there was nowhere else to go type?
Are you meaning the companies that were forced to change, or the talent that was forced to change? Which mindset?
I'm going to go with the talent. The talent is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So I think some people are coming back. I think some people absolutely, the ones who made it were the ones who didn't overthink it. They said, hey, this is the direction we're going. I better figure this out and learn a new skill and figure out virtual production and tap into that and move quickly. Those are the ones who've, number one, made a fortune, right? Because they are in high demand. They do know how to do that part. But they were smart, right? And same with the business owners. The ones who made it were the ones who made decisions quickly. They had the vision to know what was happening and had the courage to act on it. And it does take courage in the midst of unknowns. There's a lot of anxiety, but it takes courage to do what you have to do to make it.
Got it. So then on the flip side, did you see companies have that same mindset or a different mindset in that?
Initially, everyone was paralyzed. There are a number of us here who had the first few weeks. I remember it was Friday, March 13th, when a lot of it went down. It's when Lasso did, our own cuts and layoffs, and talking to our customers over the next few weeks, it was very dark, very heavy. People were, they were grown men crying on the phone because, I was crying right there with them, right? Because it was very scary. But at the end of the day, there came a moment a few weeks in where people were like, okay, I'm done. I need to figure this out and I need to move quick. Those were the ones who made it versus those that just didn't have the ability to drag themselves out of the ditch, much less lead their teams out of a ditch. And so, obviously, it's a very different mentality today, thank goodness. But those are the leaders in our industry, the ones who sought wisdom and then had the courage to know what to do with that.
Yeah. That's so good. And so like in moving forward, right? Like one of the things that, and I heard you say, and I laugh because I think the same thing is that, but some people, as you know, the world's opening up, right? Or it is open and we're moving into the space. Some people are kind of falling back into old habits. Like, what do you think the keys are into making sure we're on our toes and we don't get hit again? Like, you know, for me personally, it's the live streaming portion, right? We've already done it. So why wouldn't you just automatically put that in everything? But so many people aren't. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so much of it is around selling and selling value. Our industry has for far too long paid the same to their talent, paid the same to rent gear, and proposed the same to the end client. And so the reality is we've taught the meeting owners how to be treated, you know, because we haven't, as a whole, sold on value. We haven't spent the time to educate. I mean, it's really easy to put a quote together that has really competitive pricing and put it in front of somebody and say, yeah, we can get you the outcome. Here's the cost, right? That's the problem. We cannot fall back into that. We've got to increase our skills, do a better job selling, understanding as a company, what is your competitive edge? What is your value prop? What are the creative services you're providing? How do you do it differently? And know where to draw the line. Know where to draw the line of that's not good business for me. I know it's scary and cash flow is important, but you are teaching your clients how to treat you and how to negotiate with you, right? It's like the same on, well, like our clients are just used to, it's always mesmerized me, if you will, these discounts that are applied, right? Everyone, it's just an assumed discount. Like, why do we do that? We right off the bat discount our services. Why? Because the client expects. They look immediately at what's the discount line on it, right? Because every quote and proposal has that, which that's another thing. There is a difference between a quote and a proposal. We need to stop thinking quotes and we need to start thinking proposals. We need to stop thinking a labor line item on our quote and start talking talent on a proposal. It's different, right? Just that semantics of it. It's different when you see a proposal and you're proposing who my team is, what my company's done, case studies, success stories, showcasing your work. Here's the talented team. Here's our creative process. Here's the outcome we're going to give you, which is very different than here's a quote that's got, you know, hundreds of line items, gear and labor. Here's my discount. Do you want to move forward? Yes or no? It's very different. It's a different engagement. And the only way we're going to be able to charge and price based on value is to sell on value and stop thinking quoting. So that's one of, if anything, that's what I hope for our industry is we don't fall back into that bad habit, because at the end of the day, the budget dictates everything moving forward. It dictates the level of talent you're going to get. It dictates the timelines in which you're going to work. It dictates the sentiment of everyone who touches that show, right? Because everyone's going to be super stressed out, disorganized. We always talk about corralling the chaos, right? Like, it makes it so much more chaotic when you don't have enough breathing room and margin, both within the budget and within the time frame. And it's a balance, right? Because everyone's working with shorter lead times. But I think we as an industry have to together push back and educate our clients on what it really takes to execute on what they're asking. Like, anything's possible, it's just going to cost you. Are you willing to do that? So before we go down this path of trying to give you something that's impossible when it comes to us making money on it, are you willing to, you know, be invested in this and to pay more for it? Because anything's possible, it's just going to cost you more.
And that's so good, because that's literally conversations I've been having of, like, because my background is like marketing and like content marketing specifically, why we're doing this podcast, like the idea behind having these conversations, because value is kind of what can dictate the price anyway. But what I felt like we still fall into is it's a commodity. Yeah. And like when people come, especially the production companies, they're just like, well, I just need people in gear. Like, how much does it cost? And it's like trying to figure out what the long-term play is to change that narrative, right? And, can one company do it? How many companies do we need to actually change on the production side of how they present to change the industry, right? Like change it to the way you're thinking. That's so
they
good.
need to sell the show. When they sell people and gear, they're selling the how, not the outcome. We're going to execute with people and gear, but that's not what you're buying. You're buying the outcome, right? You're buying the show, a successful show that's going to have a return on your investment. And too many times, I see quotes, again, not proposals, that are outlining the how. I'm going to use people and gear for that, and here's your price.
Yep. Man, that's so great. And so, because one of the things that I want to hear your thought on this of like, because the supply and demand right now is so flopped, right? There's so much demand, and right now it is commoditized in a sense, right? Because people just need those things. Do we have to wait for the demand to drop before we can actually push that narrative?
We can't wait.
Is that something we can start?
We can't afford to wait. Like, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. Like, the time is now. We've been given, Tom Simpson always says, and I love this, we were given a do-over, right? So now that we know better, we have to do better. We can't wait, and it's going to be hard, right? And it might mean that we might lose out on some things. But know your worth, know your value, know your team's worth. Don't put your team behind the 8 ball for the sake of chasing bad business. Instead, invest the time and energy to educate your customers. Like, there's a book called The Challenger Sale, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things. We talk about it a lot here at Lasso because people do business with people when they learn something. They don't want a bunch of yes people around them. Like, I don't ever want to hire people around me that think like I do. I want people who think completely different, who are going to teach me something I don't know, challenge me in the right way. And our job as an industry is to keep these event owners from making mistakes, right? If you want a great outcome, I can tell you we've been doing this 20 years. This is exactly how you do it. Don't make that mistake. And you have to say it with conviction versus, sorry, the client doesn't want that. They want us to do this whole thing within $150,000 and like, how are we going to do that? No, instead go back and say, here's what you can get for 150, but I heard you say you wanted X. Here's a pathway to getting that, and let me tell you how we're going to give you a return for spending that extra amount of money, right? We've got to help them get there. And so I don't think we can afford to wait. The time is now, or before we know it, we're going to wake up in 5 years and look exactly like we did 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I mean, because a huge part of this podcast, right, the event Collab podcast, and that's what we wanted to highlight, is there's a collaboration, right? Like, for so long, we've been battling each other as vendors, right? Like, the catering is, they're doing their thing, and the event planner, hey, well, I got a budget, I just need it cheap, and okay. And man, that's so good. One of the things I want to kind of switch gears, but this kind of it plays into the future of the industry, right? As the talent pool kind of shrunk, how do we get more talent in and then get in with that right attitude that you're talking about now?
I love talking about this. Well, the first thing, I'm not sure. I mean, people enter the event space because, let's face it, it's cool, right? Like, that you get to see some cool stuff. And again, being the consumer of the event versus being the participant who's helping create it, that's kind of cool. But there's no career path. Everything is freelance, right? And that's the nature of events. Any project-based service is going to always have freelancers. And our industry got it wrong by thinking it's okay to not have a career path. No one has stepped in and owned a career path for these individuals who went to school, they invested their time and money to learn a craft, and then we just kind of push them out there and say, good luck. You're responsible for finding your own clients. You're responsible for training yourself. There's nowhere to go that tells you where the best training is and what the career path. There's no one to take you under the wing, right? And show you. There's no one who's going to invest in you when it comes to benefits and 401k and training and like have skin in the game with them, right? And so because of that, it's hard, especially now, right? So many people left. I would love people to come back, but we have to give them a reason to come back. We have to give them a reason and say, look, we're not going to treat you like you were treated before. We're going to respect you. We're not going to call you labor. We're not going to call you the help. We're not going to call you a permalancer, a freelance, like you're one of us. You are talent. You are the ones who make it happen. Like at Lasso, we always say, every event experience is only as good as the people who make it happen. Not the gear, not the project. It's the people who make it all come to life. Each person shows up with their own set of values, their own skill sets, their own disciplines, and it takes everyone working together to make that happen. So do I think it's possible that we can build a supply pool? Absolutely, but we need to start talking and acting different, and we need to incentivize them. It doesn't mean you're going to hit the road, eat garbage on the road, work 18-hour days, and work for a flat day rate. Day rates should go away. I believe that. Because a day rate, more times than not, the talent are the ones who get taken advantage of. Great, I'm going to work 18 hours and get paid on a 10-hour day rate. And some days, sure, it works to my advantage. I'm going to work 8 and get paid 10. But far more times than not, they're getting abused. And I think that that's something we have to pay attention to. And I think the reason why they're getting abused is they're not selling the shows at enough budget to afford great talent. So again, I think it all starts with the budget, because everything flows downstream from that.
Yeah, that's so good, because like when you talk about it, like one of the questions I had written here, I literally framed it with the term Wild West, because like depending on who you work for, depending on what coast you're on, right, depending on the type of show, if it's a corporate show, you may get paid a little more. If it's a concert, it may be less. And it's like, do you believe that some sort of standardization is needed? Does that help, or does that, is part of it competition? Like the reason that you have the different rates are competition, or is it just lack of knowledge anyway? And so the people that are getting paid less, they just don't know any better.
Part of it is they don't know better. Yes, we absolutely have to standardize. It's our number one mission, is to create some standardization. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Every company calls these disciplines something different. At the end of the day, it falls into audio, video, lighting, and kind of general, right? Something falls into one of those buckets. So on Lasso, we have the purview of seeing when a company joins us, they upload all their position names, because they can do it however they want. They can 1099, they can W-2, they can call it whatever. They can call it the Mickey Mouse position for all we care, right? Like it's their data, they do it. But it is fascinating, companies that are uploading hundreds and hundreds of position names for like 30 disciplines. And why that is a bad habit is, I'm a freelancer for 8 to 10 companies in a year. You might call me one thing on one show. Now I'm hired, I'm thinking I'm this position, and so I go to work on a different show, but they define it a little bit differently, and now I'm not set up to succeed, because the expectation is different from me, because companies call it something different, or they call it the same thing, but it means something different, right? And so like, I'll give you the most common example. Most people think a stagehand is unskilled labor, right? It's a body. That is not the definition of stagehand, because guess what? If you ask for a stagehand, or you expect them to be skilled, and I send you somebody that's not, we're going to have a problem, right? So we as an industry need to agree on what are the most common discipline names. Let's all define them similarly. And same with how they get paid, right? If I'm a freelancer, again, I work for 8 to 10 different companies. It's so funny. It's my favorite question to ask. And I'm going to ask you too. I'm going to turn this on you in a minute, Chris. But when we ask techs, like, how are you getting paid on this gig? They don't know, because guess what? They're working for 8 to 10 different companies who all have, and I kid you not, because we script these time rules for our customers, they all have on average 10-page document that outlines how they pay their people. Now, if I'm a freelancer, if it takes 10 pages to describe to me how I'm going to get paid, that's a problem. People should know how they're going to get paid. No wonder everyone's so angry. They thought they were going to get paid one way, because that's how Company A did it. I freelance for Company B. They tweak it a little bit differently, and now I'm mad because I think Company B did something wrong, but in reality, they just pay differently. How about we just standardize it? Most of these other industries do that. They don't have day rates, week rates, project rates, hourly rates, overtime some here, but not there. If it's a full moon, you get overtime, but if it's a Tuesday, you don't. Like, I'm being a little facetious, but we see that. All the time.
Well, it feels just like
have you ever worked a show where you weren't 100% sure exactly how you were getting paid? You just kind of felt like, some of these things are kind of standard, but maybe there's some nuances in there. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it happened. And it changed the way I looked at it. It was like, hey, before I even show up, I need to know how I'm getting paid.
Will they explain it to you?
So I can work easily, right?
Okay.
Most times it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, like you said, it's all the nuances of, that's why I love this whole conversation, right? Because the people that don't know better, they don't even know what the questions are to ask. Like, to me, I'm just a question person. So I instinctively just ask all the questions regardless of if I need to know or not. And you'll tell me if I don't need to know, right? And,
we have got to figure out a way forward as an industry. I mean, one of the other things that I think is crazy is our industry is one of the only industries that doesn't have an SIC code or a NAICS code. And those are the codes that kind of, pull together all finance companies, all healthcare, all, law firms, all dentist practice, right? They all have a code that pulls them all together. Not our industry. There is nothing like that. And that's why it's hard for us to get COVID relief as an industry, because we don't exist as an industry on the books.
Yeah.
We legitimately do not exist as an industry. So that's why you called it the Wild Wild West.
Right.
That's exactly why.
Yeah. And it's like you said, until that happened, a lot of people didn't even, it's as weird as this sounds, people didn't know the industry existed. And you're kind of like, but you literally go to the shows and you go to the conferences, you go to the concerts.
And it's one of the fastest growing industries in the world. And it's not expected to slow down. So to be one of the fastest growing industries and something that every single human being is going to have some level of engagement with, right? Like, as a human being, we may not ever talk to an attorney, right? We may not ever have a need to do, we may not ever have a need for a financial planner, right? But as a human being, you're going to touch events and entertainment at some point in your life. And yet we don't have anything standard that formalizes us as an industry. That's crazy to me. You're getting me all fired up now, because there is just so much. There's so much opportunity, because we overcomplicate it. And if we can just get on the same page, we're going to have more investments in our industry. It's why we don't have a lot of tools. There's not a lot of investment. And so everyone's forced to figure it out with very few tools and resources. It's why we have not a lot of funding. We didn't get a lot of COVID relief as an industry. And we were the first industry to shut down, the last to come back, and the hardest hit. And we didn't get any funding. And we had to fight like crazy to get some of this ancillary things, which didn't make a difference. And it's unfortunate, and it has to change.
And so in an industry, right, that there's so much freelance labor, contract labor, whatever term we want to go with, right? Like, how do we actually develop leaders in that space? Because I feel like in other spaces, there's like a company, and the companies get bigger, and then you can't miss them, right? Because when that company, airline industry, right? The airline goes down, they're screaming about it, and you can see them. But I feel like in our events industry, like even the larger companies that I know because I'm in the industry, people have never heard of these companies. And so, like, how do we even develop leaders in this space when so much of it is unknown, right?
That's a whole other topic, because I think that's something else. Look, I love our industry, so please don't get me wrong. I just get frustrated by it, because it has so much potential and so little leadership. There are few leaders, real leaders. And to me, leadership are people who are unafraid to do the right thing. They do the hard stuff first, right? They're not afraid to go against the flow. And until somebody stands up and does the hard things and makes a stand, puts their flag down and says, this is important to me. We're going to change this. We are going to create a career path for our industry. We're going to make sure the focus is on the people in the industry, because without the people, nothing happens. The show does not go on. It cannot go on. And so until somebody's willing to fight the fight, because that's how it feels some days, because when you move the needle and you kind of go against the grain, there's a lot of haters. And I get it. Change is hard. But some people have to start doing the hard stuff. They have to say no to certain things, even though it's common, even though you're going to be looked at crazy. And that's what I hope, because the leaders are going to be what pull us out of this. It's going to be what gets our industry on the radar. It's going to be what gets investments to start being made in our industry. The leaders are going to lead us out of this, because otherwise it's just constant chaos and we're never going to progress. And it's a shame, because I'm just so passionate. There's so much opportunity that we need people to start stepping up and doing the unpopular thing, making the unpopular decisions, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. That's so deep. There's so much in that. I really hope everybody listens to this, because to me, this is a conversation that nobody talks about. And again, from the different angles, it's so important for the growth in the future. And again, like you said, I don't want us to fall again because we didn't learn from our mistakes. Like, we don't advance, we don't bring.
And there's a false sense of security right now, right? Everyone's busy. That's awesome, but before you know it, we're going to look up and we would have been busy for 3 years and have all the same bad habits. And sometimes you got to work on your business, not always in it. And we have to be intentional about that, working on our industry, not just in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Do you think in our industry that so I think one of the things that's interesting in our industry is kind of how there are a couple of the big players that just kind of come up and just kind of gobble up the smaller ones, right? And that's a normal thing in most industries. But do you think this is a space where the small business is really where the change is, or do you think it just becomes, at some point, it's just 4 or 5 big guys?
We all own it. We all own the change. That's what's interesting, right? Because these freelancers, they work for the big and the small, right? And they are the linchpin for all of this, right? Because they have the reach into the smallest of the small and the biggest of the big, right? Because sometimes they want to work for a smaller company because they can stay home, they don't have to travel. They got a relationship with them, but hey, the bigger ones, oh, that's a cooler show. That's a higher end thing, so let me pop in and do that, right? So they have choices. And so it can't just be the big ones leading us. Because the reality is that the small, medium, and large, all companies operate with the same dysfunction, the same chaos, the same lack of standardization. It's not like, certain groups of companies have figured it out. I mean, there are certainly those that have, and I love them and commend them, and I think we should highlight them. But yeah, it's going to take everybody.
That's so great. Like, this has been such a great conversation. I love this. So what we do now, we jump into the sections, we call it our rapid fire, kind of our fun questions.
I think so.
Are you ready for that?
I feel pressure. All right, I'm ready.
All right.
I know,
These
right?
are the secret ones. I didn't want anybody to know,
Okay.
So the first one's easy.
Coffee all the way.
Or tea?
Go to bed thinking about it, wake up thinking about it. It's my favorite type. It's only 1 cup a day, but
love that.
It's an important cup.
Really? You survive in this industry on 1 cup a day? Is it a big cup? It
is, actually. Yes, it is. And it's Cuban coffee usually. My husband is Cuban, so that's how I started drinking coffee. Was I didn't like coffee before, and he's like, no, you got to try Cuban coffee. So I'm like, oh, now I'm hooked.
I love that. All right. What is your favorite mobile phone app to use?
There's a lot. Depends on my day, right? What I'm doing.
Yeah. Which one's the more fun one?
See, I'm not like a Candy Crusher. Like, I'm like a boring like business person. Like that's like. So a lot of my stuff is like professional reading, like boring stuff. There's not a whole lot of like fun apps that I'm playing around with.
Got it. No, that's good though. What's one question that you wish people would ask you? Or something that maybe I should have asked that I didn't know enough to ask you?
What do you mean by that? Well,
like
no, sorry. That is the question.
So
like when somebody asks me something and I answer, like people are like, yeah, they're not even paying. Like to me, that says they heard me when they say, well, what do you mean by that? Right? It takes the conversation to a different. It's more than just a, hey, what do you think? Okay, good. And like, keep moving. Like, it's a intentional, like, I'm wanting to connect with you on this. And so when somebody says, well, tell me what you mean by that, I'm like, oh, they just heard what I said and they want to know more. So it just makes me feel heard.
That's so good. And you got me on there. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. That's so good. What is your favorite like podcast or book or ebook, something that you're reading or listening to right now?
The book that I just finished reading is one called The Founder's Brand, that our vice president of growth gave to me, and I loved it. Just finished it. There's so many great things in there that I would encourage other leaders in our industry to read. It just, it talks about we all have a brand and a reputation, and how do we build that and make it to be what we want it to be? Like, we own our brand as human beings. So it's a great book.
Oh, that sounds good. What is your favorite city to work in?
There's a lot. Some I love for the weather, some I love for the food, some I love for the people I see in them. So I love California because of the weather, hate it because of the traffic. Love New York for the food, can't stand the traffic. So it really just kind of depends on, what the purpose is.
I love that. Where do you think our industry will be in 3 years?
Where do I think it will be?
Your personal prediction.
I think we're going to do a better job working together. That is what I hope, and I just have to believe that, because we are never going to progress when we're constantly pointing fingers. There's so many angry people and are just jaded. They just have the wrong information. They're skeptical. And we've done it to ourselves. Of course they're jaded and angry. We didn't pay them. We didn't pay them enough. They're still chasing money from jobs they did 6 months ago. Of course they're going to be angry, right? Skeptical, I think, because people always just feel like nobody understands our industry. Oh, it's complicated. You have to be one of us to know it, kind of thing. And I think that, and that is true. But at the end of the day, we as an industry, we have to take the leap of faith. We have to believe the best in each other, and we have to have some optimism, And so my hope is we just kind of set aside the edginess, figure out how to be a community, how to work together, how to help each other, rather than just all the skepticism that exists.
That's so good. What's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
My dad, he passed away during COVID, and there were always 3 things that he said to me, and I literally think of them often every single week. He used to always say to me, Angela, it's your attitude. Your attitude is what dictates your entire life, how you feel about things, right? So he would say, it's your attitude. He would always also lecture me on keeping my room spotless. And the way my dad's spotless, I'm not even going to try to imitate how he would say it, but it just rings in my ears. So I always try to have my home clean, my office clean, because it helps me think clearly. And then the other thing is time management. He always talked about it's how you manage your time. It's how you manage your time. So my brain is just built that way. So those 3 things are always in my mind, thanks to my sweet dad.
Oh, that's so good. And last but surely not least, what does collaboration mean to you?
Sharing ideas, respect for an opinion different than your own, and thinking about what's possible, right? Forget talking about what the problems are. Let's think about what's possible. What can it be?
Yeah. That's so good. Well, Angela, this was such a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to have it. Where can people connect with you, find out more about what you have going on?
My email address is angela.alea, which is ALEA @lasso.io. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well, and would love to hear from everybody. And thank you for facilitating this conversation. I think the more we all talk about it, the more we're actually going to be able to do something about it. So thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm going to shout your podcast out for you because I made sure I listened before we got on here because I was like, I gotta be able to, I love to be able, the authenticity of being able to say like, hey, go check it out. It's great. And I don't want it to be a lie, right? Like, I don't want to be like, but it's great. The couple conversations, or the first one wasn't a conversation. It was you talking. The second was a conversation. Like it made this exciting, and it actually gave me different questions to ask. Because of the passion that you're putting into what you're talking about on those. So if you guys are looking, make sure you check out Corralling the Chaos on I'm assuming everywhere podcasts. I listen to it on Spotify,
yes,
but
thank
it's
you
everywhere.
so much. We appreciate that.
So, absolutely. Angela, until next time, I thank you again.